This really might have been the best, like, climactic final act sequence I done seen in a long time. What's up, beautiful people? It's Nikki. Welcome back to my channel, King Nikki TV, where I give you commentary on popular movies and TV shows. In this video, I will be giving you a list of the best horror and thriller movies of 2022. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out my video ranking the top 10 best movies of 2022. Now, seeing as there were 9 out of 10 movies on my top 10 list that were horror or thriller, yeah, there should really be no question of where my tastes lie. But because of that, this list will not be in any particular order, because obviously those 10 are the top of the year all around. Now, let's get right into it. The best horror and thriller movies of 2022, the best that year had to give us, in no particular order. Number 1 is Hunt, listed as action, drama, mystery, thriller. Hunt is a spy thriller based on the 1980s national security planning with South Korea versus North Korea, a mole in the agency, double cross, espionage, tension, mystery, everybody's a suspect, brutal interrogation scenes. This is a character-driven story, so the action sequences are few and far between, but baby, the ones we get are so freaking epic. Exciting shootout, so well shot because it's fast paced, but everything is clear. I hate a really frenzied, hard to make out what's happening action scene. Hunt is so freaking intense. Excellent pacing. You do not feel the runtime, and it never lets up. The story doesn't lag. Now, it isn't a linear story. We go back and forth with the time periods of past and present, and while it might get confusing for some at moments, the plot does wrap up in, with each story you get a full understanding of what everything means and how it all ties in together. I enjoyed how they portrayed the complexity of the characters, their motivations. We are looking for the mole right along with the movie. And y'all, I can't be no spy. It is a really well laid out mystery. I feel like the tonal changes were smooth for me. It goes from intense to emotional to charged, super tense. I haven't loved a movie like this type of movie this much since Tom Cruise Valkyrie. I'm not the biggest fan of political spy thriller type movies. Now, Hunt is the directorial debut of the Squid Game star Lee Jung-jae. No disrespect if I pronounce that wrong. Who, as always, he plays a phenomenal lead. I love how unrecognizable he was in this movie. I love when actors play completely different characters and really embody each one. Not only was his performance outstanding, but as a director, I'm hyped to see what this man does next. He put just such, just the scenes, the way it's shot. Put a story in this man's hand and just let him do his thing, and I'm signing up. Number 2, Emily the Criminal is a crime drama thriller about a woman stuck in debt and at a dead-end job. She gets pulled into the criminal underworld. I love Theo Rossi. He is amazing here, as well as our lead. She did really well. Y'all, this one tore my nerves up. There is a subtlety with this movie. We don't get any big action, but it is so intense, really well written. Emily isn't necessarily likable. She isn't a good guy type of character, but she is an entertaining character to follow as we watch her get involved with her crime mentor, Theo Rossi. I do, though, as well as the Aubrey girl did, I can't think of her last name, I feel like she is pretty much the same every time I see her. Very deadpan and unemotional. She kind of plays that same way every time I see her, which is fine. Play to your strengths. This is kind of a female Breaking Bad-esque story. There is a loose end that I wish was tied up, but stellar performances, great script, intense story. Oh, and I liked how the title played into the movie in a certain scene that we get regarding the title. Number 3, Prey, listed as action, adventure, drama, horror, sci-fi thriller, the Predator prequel. Now, I won't rehash this too much. I did a full video on this as well as talked about it in my best of 2022 video. Prey is exciting, entertaining, nostalgic, bloody, kick-ass, epic. Prey is everything we have come to love about the Predator franchise without all the stuff that we have come to hate about the Predator franchise. Great cast of characters. I love seeing the types of people on screen that we don't typically get to see. The dog was the MVP. Number 4, The Witch 2, the other one, listed as action mystery thriller. This is the sequel to the 2018 film The Witch. We get seemingly the same plot as the first one. Unassuming teen girl turns out to have special abilities. Once again, linked to the secret laboratory and secret experiments. Both movies are extremely similar in how they are laid out. We get a pretty, I'll just call it boring story that we follow. And then they ramp it up and give us an amazing third act. Look, the first half of The Witch 2 honestly verges on unbearably boring. But the reason it makes this list is because that third act finale was freaking up. I'm talking about, Lord, if the whole movie could have been that exciting, this really might have been the best, climactic final act sequence I done seen in a long time. Talk about a payoff at the end of a story. Overall, the first movie, in my opinion, was better as a whole, but the third act sequence in The Witch 2 takes the mother freaking cake. Action, surprise, reveals, blood, mayhem, carnage. Everything a third act should be. Number 5, Scream 5, a horror mystery thriller, the 5th movie in the franchise. 25 years after the brutal murders in Woodsboro, a new killer targets our ultimate final girl, Sydney Prescott, as well as a new group of teens. Look, I know I am in the minority here, but as a huge fan of Scream, I hated Scream 4. I did. And this one really redeemed the franchise for me. One of the fun parts of Scream is guessing who Ghostface is, who is the killer, trying to figure that out. And they took that fun out because it was super easy to call who it was. In the first 5-10 minutes of the dang movie, I'm sure everybody called it, but overall, this was a masterful attempt at following Wes Craven's amazing legacy, and it fits in nicely with the rest of the franchise, in my opinion. Now, coming in at number 6, Virus 32 is a horror movie about a zombie-like virus that transforms people into super fast, super violent killing machines. But with this virus, the infected become incapacitated for 32 seconds after they attack. Now, y'all, this movie definitely has some major logic issues. To sum it up, Virus 32 is the bargain brand 28 days later. There isn't really much story here. We have a mom at her late night shift job with her kid. Why she leaves the kid super far away from her, I have no idea. The infected get inside somehow, and the mom has to find her daughter and fight to survive and get to safety. Essentially, though, it's just a fun zombie flick that you can't really think too much into. It is an entertaining way to kill time if you're a fan of zombie movies. Virus 32 isn't groundbreaking or honestly even very memorable, but I had a lot of fun with this movie. I thought it was really entertaining. There's a locker scene in particular where the camera panning slow trick worked really well for me to create just a fun tension, because I was sitting there what's behind the corner? Move, camera, pan. Number 7, Bones and All, a drama romance horror about 2 young cannibals trying to survive on the margins of society. This was a movie that was not on my radar at all, in the slightest. I'm not really a fan of romance in general. I'm not very familiar with the leads. I have no clue who this Timothy Chalamet is, and I've only ever seen the young lady Taylor Russell from the Escape Room movies, and I wasn't particularly impressed or blown away. So the story nor the cast really drew me in. Then I heard good things about it, but what pulled me in was when I heard there were some gruesome scenes. And y'all know I'm going to always be there for the gruesome. Overall, I enjoyed Bones and All way more than I thought I would. There is this somber, creepy, subtle, and like eerie tone to the movie. I love the feel, the visuals. I really enjoyed the visuals. I am obsessed with this director. His choices in this movie, so many shots just look good. The angles were amazing. The way the cast was shot, loved it. Top tier. The camera panning puts me on edge. That is one camera trick that will always work every time. The 2 leads were incredible, very talented, but the standout for me was the character of Sully. I would watch an entire movie on Sully. Let's get the Sully villain origin story. There is a revelation that is pretty easy to see miles before we ever get there, but it didn't hurt my enjoyment of the movie. There is also something in the 3rd act that it's easy to see coming. It also didn't hurt my enjoyment. I love that this movie ends on a dark note. I mean, a movie like this for me shouldn't have a happy ending. Like, it fits, but I just in particular prefer not to have happy endings. I don't know, y'all call me morbid. I do wish that the boundaries had been pushed a bit more on the core conflict. Marion doesn't want to do bad things. She doesn't want to have these urges, while on the other hand, Lee embraces it and he goes along with it willingly, and Marion ends up getting into some stuff unknowingly, but I just felt like, man, let's really cross these lines and push back on these ideas and get this conflict just kind of bubbled up to the surface. And that's one big flaw for me with the story. It feels like a series of things happen, and for me as the viewer, there's never really any impact felt on the characters. It's kind of just like things happen and they just keep rolling. There are some story flaws. I wish there was more meat on the bones of this story, pun intended. But it definitely entertains. It is beautifully shot. And I love movies that just get you to empathize with less traditional characters or the bad guy characters. Okay, I done went off on a whole thing about this movie. So next, I also enjoyed how Bones and All was incorporated into the script. I really like that. Number 8, The Black Phone, horror thriller movie about a young boy who gets abducted and held in a basement where he starts receiving phone calls on a disconnected phone from the killer's previous victims. Top tier, top notch performances, good execution, good story, great story, effectively creepy with some good jump scares. Ethan Hawke, the motherfucking Ethan Hawke, is truly menacing in this role. Some flaws, but a really solid horror movie. Now, number 9, Emergency Declaration, a Korean action drama thriller with a situation of a terror incident that occurs mid-flight. A passenger jet declares an emergency. This was one of those little illogical action thrillers where there's one issue right after another: political issue, medical, human, the system issues as far as the plane. Pretty much the writer thought of everything that could possibly go wrong and threw it all into the movie. Very in line with the disaster movie formula, which I personally love and am a big fan of. Emergency Declaration starts off really solid in the first half half, but with over 2 hours of runtime, it does start to derail a bit. I have no issue with long movies, but it wasn't needed here. They could have honestly chopped off 20 to 30 minutes, really. The cast all around was top notch, but the MVP was the villain. That was the star here. His performance was standout, knockout, amazing. One thing I love, a ticking clock. I love a race against time. I love a disaster. You have to suspend some logic, and they really extremely fumble the ending. But baby, Koreans love some melodrama, child, and I love it too. And something else I love, a creature feature. Number 10, The Lair, a very B-movie action horror creature feature where a military crew discovers an underground bunker where half human, half alien, man-made biological weapons have been created by who else? The Russians, child. The Lair is a mediocre, mildly entertaining creature feature that does feel dated. But if you're like me and you are just a fan of cheesy, low-budget B-movie creature features, I do think that you will have some fun with this one. The Lair isn't dull or boring in any way. It definitely successfully entertains. I actually think that they did pretty well with their low budget, except for the design of the actual creature, which is honestly pretty underwhelming. We get fun characters, we get good acting, even though I have never seen none of these actors a day in my life. We get sufficient action. The guy who directed this also is the same guy that directed The Descent. But please, don't let that fool you, child. Number 11, no, the only Jordan Peele movie I like. And while it's supposed to be a horror, it definitely feels way more sci-fi thriller for me. Residents witness an uncanny and chilling discovery. The design of the creature was a big downfall for me here, as well as some story issues. But overall, Nope really was an exciting watch theater experience, elevated by the performance of the motherfucking Keke Palmer. Now, I am a little confused on the title of this movie, this next movie. I found it on Prime listed as Hunted, but it is on IMDb as Hounded. Number 12, Hunted, Hounded, action horror thriller in line with the 90s movie Surviving the Game. A home robbery takes an evil turn when the young thieves are caught by the homeowners and then hunted across their estate. Guys, I like a generic movie. I do. I'm not ashamed. There is a time and a place for everything. This is actually, though, really entertaining for such a low budget film. And yeah, there are some issues, but overall, this was really solid. We got some really dumb decisions because, you know, writers don't know what else to make their characters do. And with a story like this, it is pretty easy to know where it's headed, but all of the acting was solid. The story is cliche heaven, but I was actually invested in the characters, very entertained by our villains, solid action and fight scenes. It doesn't lag at all. There is consistently something going on. Hunted is one of those movies that passes some time in an enjoyable way. My biggest gripe is they set something up with the robbery crew that could have been really interesting, but they don't follow through. They drop it and it just disappears from the story. I don't know what that was about. Maybe some scenes got cut. Number 13 is Fresh, the comedy horror from Hulu about a young woman who becomes romantically involved with a man who turns out is hiding something sinister. Very engaging, disturbing, depraved, dark, stomach turning. A really good mix of horror and comedy. Sebastian Stan was really mesmerizing and creepy and charming as the villain of Fresh. Number 14, No Exit, another Hulu offering, a mystery thriller about a group that gets stuck at a rest stop during a blizzard when a woman discovers a kidnapped child locked in a car that belongs to one of the people that is stuck inside with her. Nothing original here and pretty predictable. This was still really fun for me. The ending is a bit of a letdown, but No Exit is an effective thriller with some solid performances. Even though predictable, they do really well creating a suspenseful and tension-filled atmosphere. Even with knowing where certain parts are headed, the scene is so well executed and exciting to watch. Even when it gets cliche, the execution makes it still fun to watch and play out. Number 15, Terrifier 2 is everything you want a horror sequel to be. Bloodier, crazier, sicker. They took every good aspect of the first Terrifier and elevated it, and they took the negatives and corrected it. If you enjoyed Terrifier, you will definitely have fun with Terrifier 2. And if you haven't seen Terrifier, but you enjoy tons of blood and guts and carnage candy and just all around grotesque horror movies, this one is for you. Number 16, The Sadness, a Korean zombie horror that is just as insane as Terrifier. If you're looking for a smart script or any type of story at all, this ain't for you. But if you just want some mindless, bloody insanity, The Sadness is for you. Number 17, Speak No Evil, the number one most infuriating horror I have seen in a really long time. This is one of those movies that is a really good movie, but you ain't gonna want to see it again. Creepy, disturbing, and a bit too much. I won't spoil anything, but there are some extreme graphic violence, and yeah, not the fun kind. Number 18, I Came By, a thriller about a young man who discovers a shocking secret when he breaks into someone's home. Very reminiscent of the movie Bad Samaritan. Though I Came By is not as good as that movie in my opinion, this was still a really entertaining thriller. I did kind of trash it in my review. I, can have critiques of things and still enjoy them. I would have liked if this were more of a horror thriller story. I appreciate the filmmakers trying to not go the most predictable route at every turn. Not as unpredictable as I would like for a story like this to be, and not as many twists and turns as I would want. But I Came By is definitely a tense, well-crafted, even haunting thriller. The villain definitely makes your skin crawl. Number 19, Significant Other, a sci-fi thriller that follows a couple who take a remote backpacking trip and end up faced with sinister events. Significant Other is why I like to see a movie at least twice before putting my opinion in stone. On first watch, I really didn't care for this that much, and even though on rewatch I had a better experience, I definitely enjoy and recommend Significant Other, but there are aspects I just don't care for. The first act, a little drab, and mainly because I don't care for our couple in the slightest. I know that folks love the young lady that plays the lead. She played in It Follows, Watcher, but I don't particularly care for those movies or her. I also don't care much for our male lead. He's pretty meh for me as an actor. So I'm sure others may feel differently about the first act. I'm also the type of movie viewer who hates for a movie to take forever to get where it's going, which I feel like this movie does. But despite those negatives, once we actually get there, the pace picks up and we get an interesting story. One we have seen before, but still interesting nonetheless. I know, I knew nothing about this movie. I saw no previews. I pretty much went in blind, and I think that you will get the best experience if you go in blind. Number 20 is Midnight, a Korean thriller about a serial killer who ends up targeting a deaf woman. Now, it does feel like the writer ran out of ideas kind of midway, and they play too heavily on the lead's handicap of being deaf. Some things get illogical. Midnight is that thriller that makes you feel uncomfortable, in my opinion, and that is due to the brilliance of the actor playing the villain. Y'all, I just love a good villain. This movie is elevated by his performance 1000%. The true standout of this film for me. This is that really edge of your seat, nail-biting, nerves tore up type of movie. The filmmakers did a brilliant job of creating a really just creepy, stressful, I'll bet unrealistic atmosphere. A little nonsensical, but intense. Number 21 is Avarice, a home invasion action thriller. Another one of those generic films that I just enjoy. I mean, guys, the tagline of the movie is, "Her family was the wrong target." Come on, man. Tell me that don't sound fun. Don't that sound like a good time? That sounds good and cheesy. Avarice is a really solid, low-budget home invasion action thriller with great bad guys, actually, a passable lead, solid acting, some good twists and turns, fun action sequences. We get a pretty simple story with an exciting execution. I had a lot of fun with this movie. I wasn't bored in the slightest. I was entertained. I mean, honestly, this reminds me of those like B movie action flicks I loved as a kid from the like late 80s and 90s. Now, is Avarice operating on as high of a level as those? Hell no. But it gives me those vibes as far as cheesy, fun, low budget action. Don't get me confused. Avarice is not as fun or well made. We ain't blowing ish up when I talk about like 90s, 80s action. But if you like generic, cheesy, solid action thrillers, I think Avarice is a fun way to kill some time. Number 22, Incantation, a found footage horror about a woman who ends up cursed after breaking a religious taboo. Child, look, I hate found footage horror. You hear me? Hate it. Even though Incantation feels a little too long, it is a really effective, well-made, sufficiently creepy and entertaining found footage horror. We get some really good imagery with this one. One thing that annoys me with the found footage genre, besides the camera work, because Lord God Jesus, I hate shaky cam and I hate ish not being in frame. But one thing I hate is how utterly dumb and unrealistic it feels to be holding a motherfucking camera and recording in many of the situations. Cloverfield, I'm talking to you. One thing I appreciate about Incantation is the writer tries to give us a pretty plausible reason for why our lead was recording in these situations. This is another movie where I feel like you will have your best experience if you just go in completely blind as possible. I knew nothing about this movie, never heard of it, didn't see a preview, I didn't know it was found footage. I just saw the little movie poster, I read the synopsis, and I decided to watch it. Y'all know I'm true to this, I ain't new to this. When it comes to horror, I am pretty generally unfazed. I will say Incantation is that horror movie that made me feel really uneasy. I wish I could say more. Just watch it. Now, number 23, Unhuman, a horror comedy about a group of high school students whose school bus crashes on a field trip and they end up in a fight to survive. Folks who have been on my channel for any amount of time, baby, even if it's just a day, you likely know it is two things as a movie watcher I absolutely hate. That is teenagers and horror comedy. So I paid this movie absolute dust, but my little sister said that I should watch and that I would enjoy it. She knows me well. She knows my taste. So I was like, okay, I gave it a chance. I didn't see a preview. I just went in blind and I actually had a really good time. I love this movie a lot more than I probably should. I do not understand the low rating on IMDb. Blood, guts, chaos. Sure, it has all the cliches, but it is so freaking entertaining. It's ridiculous and silly and carnage. Like, I thought y'all love stuff like that. I feel like this is not a parody per se, maybe like satire. That's how it feels to me, and I get the joke, love the execution. I didn't particularly like any of the characters, not even the girl we're supposed to like, but given the fact that it is a group of teen characters and I didn't hate not a one of them, is a big freaking deal. I didn't particularly like anyone, but at the same time, I certainly didn't dislike anyone. If you have any horror or thrillers from 2022 that you feel were among the best and is missing from this list, then let's talk about it down below. Comment and let me know your thoughts, your favorite horror thrillers from 2022. And while you're here, stick around and check out my playlist of my best and worst of 2022. As always, thank you so much for watching the video, for supporting the channel. Make sure you share this video, like, make sure you subscribe and have your bell notification on. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.